Greetings, everyone. This is KSCW Radio's Rec Center Show. Your host, Gary Cohen. Our special guest today, Jim Sloan, the president of the governing board of the Rec Centers of Sun City West. Jim, welcome back.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate you being here.
Well, you know, it's October's around the bend, and people are coming back. How things looking? You know, you got a whole new CCNR committee going. How things going with them?
Well, the CCNR specifically has been taken on by the rec centers. We have numbers now, and I didn't bring them with me, Gary, so we'll not give you numbers that we've had, but we have about 60 open cases at this point. We've settled quite a few of them, so the staff is working fine. There's 3 folks in there right now handling complaints. There's other issues with that have emerged that we didn't ever expect. One of them goes something like this. When these CCNRs were originally written, when all of our homes were built 40 years ago or something, we said the CCNRs say there are brick or iron fences. That's all we could have in those days. Well, since then, we've had the implementation of vinyl. We've had all kinds of different fabrics that are available to us to use that don't go away, don't rot in the sun, in the summer sun. So those kinds of things are a reinterpretation of what was happening back in Del Webb's day. And so we're struggling with that. So we have formed a special committee under board member Jim Young. He's handling it, and there's 5 members on that board, and they're going to look at some of those things. Another one would be back in that day, there's a rule in town that you can't not run a business out of your home. Well, in the day, that would have been something like running a flea market out of your front yard or doing car repair in your driveway. Those kinds of things were not allowed. That would draw a lot of attention, a lot of traffic to your house. Well, we know that we have people working remotely, for example, here. We have realtors working out of their homes. Are those considered businesses anymore? What is that description? And so we've talked to our attorney. We think that we can get some reinterpretations of those kinds of things done to make it more equitable and less cumbersome to move forward. So the committee is going to struggle with those questions first, and they'll get input from the community. And then they'll make a recommendation to the board, and then the board will give direction to staff on how to implement those changes.
I imagine that enforcement is a real big issue. We want to have an incredibly happy community, which we already do. But, when it comes to putting your foot down, sometimes you have to, right? Mm.
Yes, and that's an interesting question that you just sort of posed, because our policy has been and continues to be overall that we have a complaint and then we respond to the complaint. So we are not out policing the city. There's our neighbors, for example, have people driving around looking for CCNR violations. We've chosen not to do that in our history. But there's some things that we've had happen that shouldn't be happening. There's trucks parked in our community that shouldn't be there, for example, that have logos of businesses on. That's specifically prohibited. But in the past, we've not been able to find them because when we go out during the days, they've not been there. And secondly, so we started doing some more proactive approach to the thing, and we found that there were people, so we asked them to stop, and they're nicely stopping. So we're not having any problem with that. Yet another one was that there are building things going on here that are licensed and permitted by the county, but we never hear about them in our internal stuff. So we have been going online and looking and seeing who's getting building permits, and we see something in our zip code that's a fence going up, for example. We send them a little letter saying, here's the requirements for CCNR on the fencing. Now, that's a departure from what we have done, and so that's a policy change that we're grappling with that this same committee will be dealing with. And whether we become proactive in our approach to CCNR enforcement is a big question. And how proactive do we want to really be? And that's a real question.
I think we make your job easier when we actually act as real neighbors. Yes. Instead of complaining. We had a situation on my block. We had a powerful storm one night. Got up the next morning, and the neighbor across the street, their tree was just down. waited a few hours, noticed that their car was still, I said, they might be out of town. I called them. They were up in the mountains. They had no idea. So instead of complaining that someone's tree is blocking the sidewalk,
Right.
you realize, hey, they might not be home. I think the more people work in concert with each other instead of just jumping to a complaint, right?
I would agree with you. And we just yesterday had a hearing on neighbors that are fighting, and so there's tit for tat going back and forth, and so it becomes silly. And we don't need that stuff. We need to all get along, and because we're living in paradise, so why would you want to get angry at your neighbor? Doesn't make sense.
You know, on the subject of storms, we finally got some water, but water remains a big issue. We're getting bigger, and more. That means more people are going to be tapping into our water supply. How are you all, working on that issue of water usage?
We're looking at it. We have. I spoke with the general manager just last week about water. He thinks that we're okay for the time being. That the Lake Mead issue is still declining, even though with all the winter storms we had last year, the Lake Mead is not getting a lot better, and so we're anticipating there's going to be a problem. I spoke to Todd Patty, who's a golf guru, our environmental services guy, and he has a plan partially drawn up to start desert landscaping our golf courses to get rid of a lot of this high water use grass. There's problems with that, though, Gary, because if we do that, first, there's the cost of conversion, and secondly, the cost of maintenance goes way up because we can't just run a big lawnmower over all that stuff. Now we have to actually go in and weed and take care of the plants that are in there. So there's pros and cons, and we may be forced into that, but at this point, we're standing pat.
I know we're all happy with getting the rain. It was an extraordinary summer.
Right, and we got to turn the sprinklers off. I don't know if you know this, but we sprinkle our golf courses 1 million gallons per course per day. 1 million. So that's just an astounding number. When I heard that first, it's just amazing amount of water goes onto our golf courses every day.
Well, also, walking by the lawn bowling, that's a nice color now.
It is indeed.
The straw color is gone. Let's talk about the pink guest cards.
Yes.
Why don't you outline again? I know we've discussed this in the past, but it's a month closer. So why don't you kind of just talk about what's up with that?
Well, the pink cards were issued back in the 70s and 80s, and then when we converted to our electronic system, our data system, we began adding stuff on credits onto our rec cards. That's how we do business now, and that's the way we want to go forward. Well, it came to our attention that there's still a lot of these floating out there, and people paid $1 for them at the time, and $1 per visit instead of $3.50 now. And so we're asking folks to use them if you can use them, or give them to your neighbor to use, those kinds of things. If you have somebody coming, you can get in for a $3.50 admission for $1 if you do it right now. We'd like to have them out of the way. I had a gentleman come in complaining about the policy, and his was issued in 1979, and he still had two visits on it, and he was upset that we were not going to let him have those 2 visits. I offered to give him $2, and he didn't want that. I even kicked it up to $5. He didn't want that either, so he wants the $7.50.
Could have done a lottery scratch-off card with that.
One would think. One would think something could happen.
Fantastic. I know the guests are back. The snowbirds are little by little, but we also do have a lot of work still going on.
Right.
Different. So folks just need to be patient and aware of what's closed. Right.
Correct. Yes, we're right now, as we speak, even R.H. Johnson Pool is closed for deep cleaning and maintenance, and there's doing some electrical lighting and that sort of thing in there. There's also going to be rolling closures because of the remodel stuff that's going on. I believe Palm Ridge is starting in the next week or so, in the first part of October, and that's going to be a couple of months. And we're saying probably January 1 is when that will reopen. The activities building anyway. And then beyond that becomes Kuntz, and Kuntz is going to be a headache for a couple, 3 months while we get that work done in there. But the beauty of the whole thing is that it's going to come out looking pristine, and we're all going to be proud and say, wasn't this a great idea? But the process is not going to be very pretty. Now, there's a way to find that, what is going on with that on our websites, or e-news, or our Facebook pages. If you check in with those kinds of things, it will tell you what's closed, what's not closed. If you can get a weekly report from the general manager that outlines all of that stuff and other stuff that's going on around town by going on our website, suncitywest.com, going to About Us, and you'll see a picture of the general manager, Bill Schwinn. You click on that, and it has all of his weekly briefings that he gets from his staff. And so that gives you closures, it gives you events, it gives you all kinds of stuff going on.
Like I was going to say, on the flip side of all the work is all the fun.
Yes.
We have a lot of events that are coming around the bend. There's
Right.
so much going on at the same time. Over 100 clubs, parties, dances, you name it. If you're bored, I don't think we are the problem, right?
No. There's so many things happening here, and I can't keep up with them all, and I don't even try anymore. I just do kind of what I want to on the fun side, and then try to keep track of how I can be of assistance otherwise.
And of course, a lot of new faces, and you also provide tours of all the facilities ongoing, and not just for new people, even folks who have been here. There's always something new to see, right?
Right, exactly. And there's a newcomers coffee coming up in November, I believe, and we'll talk about that another time. But that's a good place to meet clubs and meet other newcomers and kind of get hooked into places. And there seems to be a lot more social events happening around town that are just club related. And last night, Barbara and I, my wife and I, went to dinner with 51 of us from the Cycle Club, and just had a nice time chatting with folks around the table that I never would have spent time with otherwise. But that's really the basis for who we are and what we're doing here, is retiring and meeting people and making new friends.
And like I've said to you before, when you go away to faraway places and you're in the airport with the flight that says Phoenix, Sky Harbor, you don't mind coming home because you know what you're coming home to.
Exactly.
Right? Great stuff. We have been talking with Jim Sloan, the president of the governing board of the Sun City West Rec Center. Jim, we thank you so much for stopping by the Rec Center show.
Happy to be here. KSCW is the place to be.
Well, we are the heart, but we're also the voice of the community. And if there's ever anything you want to say to our community, the chair is open to you all the time.
Perfect. I appreciate that very much, and I take advantage of it.
Well, thank you very much. Again, you've been listening to the Rec Center show on KSCW 103.1 FM. Your host, Gary Cohen. See you next time.